The cold that December night felt unbearable. A thin layer of snow covered the sidewalks, and the city seemed unusually quiet, as if it were holding its breath. At a nearly empty bus stop, Hannah Miller sat alone on a metal bench, shivering despite her efforts to stay composed. She wore a light dress meant for indoor warmth, not for surviving freezing temperatures. Beside her feet rested a small, worn handbag. Inside it were a few clothes, some old photographs, and the divorce papers that had been handed to her just 3 hours earlier. Hannah was 27 years old, and in a single afternoon, her entire life had collapsed. Her marriage had ended for one reason alone. She couldn't have children. Her husband, Ethan, had been brutally honest. There were no arguments, no attempts to understand her pain. The doctor's reports were enough for him. He wanted a family in the traditional sense, and Hannah no longer fit into that future. Adoption and medical treatments were never options in his eyes. By sunset, she was asked to leave the house they once called home. Hannah had nowhere to go. Her parents had passed away years ago, and most of her friendships had faded during her marriage. The women's shelter was full, and her savings wouldn't even cover a full week at a cheap motel. So she sat at the bus stop, staring at the snow as it fell, wondering how her life had unraveled so quickly. She didn't notice the approaching footsteps until a soft voice broke the silence. "Excuse me, are you waiting for a bus?" Hannah looked up to see a tall man standing a few feet away. He wore a dark coat, his hair dusted with snow, and beside him stood 3 children bundled in colorful winter jackets. Their curious eyes were fixed on her. She nodded, even though she knew the last bus had already left. Before the man could say anything else, the youngest girl tugged at his sleeve. "Dad, she's freezing," she whispered loudly. "We should help her." The man knelt down to Hannah's level, careful not to appear threatening. "My name is Daniel Carter," he said gently. "These are my kids, Lily, Noah, and Ben. We live just a few blocks from here." He hesitated for a moment, then continued, "It's not safe for you to stay out here tonight. If you're willing, you're welcome to come to our home, just for the night. You'll be warm, fed, and safe." Hannah's throat tightened. Kindness from a stranger felt unreal after everything she had endured that day. She searched his face, finding no pity, only concern. After a long pause, she whispered, "Thank you. I don't know how to repay you." Daniel offered a small, reassuring smile. "You don't have to. Sometimes people just need a little help." As Hannah stood up, her legs weak from the cold, she had no idea that this simple act of kindness would become the turning point of her entire life. Daniel's house was warm in a way Hannah hadn't felt in months. Soft yellow lights glowed through the windows, and the moment she stepped inside, the cold that had settled into her bones began to fade. The scent of fresh tea and something sweet filled the air, wrapping around her like a quiet promise of safety. "Go get changed into your pajamas," Daniel told the kids gently. "I'll be there in a minute." He turned to Hannah and handed her a thick blanket. "Please sit. I'll make you something warm." She lowered herself onto the couch, suddenly aware of how exhausted she was. Her hands shook, not just from the cold, but from the emotional weight she'd been carrying all day. Within minutes, Daniel returned with a mug of hot tea and a plate of sandwiches. "You must be hungry," he said simply. Hannah hadn't realized how long it had been since she'd eaten. She nodded, embarrassed, and took a careful bite. Tears stung her eyes as warmth spread through her body, not just from the food, but from the quiet kindness of the moment. The children soon returned, their laughter filling the room. Lily showed Hannah her favorite drawing, while Noah talked excitedly about his school project. Ben, the oldest, watched quietly, but stayed close, as if making sure Hannah felt welcome. After the kids went to bed, the house grew calm. Daniel sat across from Hannah with a cup of tea of his own. You don't have to tell me anything, he said gently. But if you want to talk, I'm here. For a long moment, Hannah stayed silent. Then the words spilled out: her marriage, the doctor's appointment, the way her husband had looked at her like she was suddenly worth nothing. She spoke about being called a failure, about being told she was broken. Daniel listened without interrupting. When she finished, her voice trembling, he said quietly, "You're not broken, Hannah. Anyone who made you feel that way didn't understand what family really means." He hesitated, then added, "My wife passed away 2 years ago. These kids, they aren't biologically mine. We adopted them. And I can tell you this with complete certainty. Love is what makes a family, not biology." Hannah felt something shift inside her. A belief she had carried for years, slowly, painfully, began to crack. Over the next few days, Hannah stayed in the guest room. The arrangement was meant to be temporary, but something about the house felt grounding. She helped make breakfast, walked the kids to school, and slowly began to breathe again. One evening, Daniel spoke carefully. "I could use some help around the house. Not charity, real help. I'd pay you fairly, and you'd have time to figure out your next steps." Hannah looked at him, surprised. For the first time since her divorce, someone saw her not as a burden, but as someone valuable. After a moment, she nodded. "Okay, I'd like that." She didn't know it yet. But this wasn't just a fresh start. It was the beginning of a new family. Weeks passed quietly, and Hannah slowly found her place in Daniel's home. What began as a temporary arrangement turned into a steady routine that brought comfort to everyone involved. She woke early to prepare breakfast, helped the kids get ready for school, and kept the house running smoothly while Daniel worked from home. But more than the tasks, it was the small moments that mattered. Lily often sat beside Hannah at the kitchen table, drawing pictures and asking endless questions. Noah liked to show her everything he learned at school, while Ben, more reserved but observant, would quietly help her carry groceries or set the table without being asked. One afternoon, Hannah noticed Ben sitting alone in the backyard, staring at the ground. She sat beside him without speaking. After a few minutes, he said softly, "I don't like when people leave." Hannah's heart tightened. "I understand," she replied gently. "But not everyone who comes into your life is meant to disappear." From that day on, Ben began to trust her more. Daniel noticed the change in his children. They laughed more. The house felt lighter. One evening, after the kids were asleep, he said, "I haven't seen them this calm in a long time." Hannah smiled, unsure how to respond. She was beginning to feel something she hadn't allowed herself to feel in years: belonging. As time went on, Hannah started thinking about her own future. One night, while cleaning the kitchen, she admitted, "I never finished college. I gave up my plans when I got married." Daniel looked at her thoughtfully. "It's not too late," he said. "You're good with kids. Have you ever thought about working with them professionally?" The idea stayed with her. Within a month, Hannah enrolled in online classes in early childhood education. Studying again made her feel capable, hopeful, like she was rebuilding herself piece by piece. Their bond deepened naturally. There were no rushed conversations, no pressure, just shared understanding. They talked late into the night about loss, fear, and starting over. Then one evening, Daniel returned home looking tense. "I've been offered a short-term work project in another city," he said. "It's a great opportunity, but I can't leave the kids for months." Hannah hesitated, then spoke carefully. "What if we went together? Just temporarily. The kids could continue school online. I can help manage things, like I do here." Daniel stared at her, surprised and deeply moved. Later that night, sitting across from her, he finally spoke the words he had been holding back. "Hannah, I care about you, not because you help us, but because of who you are." Her eyes filled with tears. "I care about you too," she admitted. "You showed me my life wasn't over." For the first time since her divorce, Hannah didn't feel broken. She felt chosen. The temporary move changed everything. What was meant to be a few months in a new city became a turning point none of them expected. The children adapted faster than anyone imagined. Online classes turned into family learning sessions at the dining table. Evenings were spent walking through unfamiliar streets, laughing, slowly turning a strange place into home. Hannah thrived. She balanced her studies with caring for the kids, discovering that her patience, empathy, and understanding came naturally. Every assignment she completed felt like a small victory over the voice that once told her she was worthless. One quiet evening, after the children had gone to sleep, Daniel sat beside her on the couch. His expression was serious, but warm. "I don't want this to be temporary anymore," he said. "Not the move. Not us." Hannah's heart raced. Before she could respond, he continued. "You were made to feel like you had nothing to offer because you couldn't have children. But look around." He gestured toward the hallway where the kids' rooms were. "You didn't give me a family. I already had one. What you gave us was healing." Tears streamed down Hannah's face. "All my life I thought love came with conditions," she whispered. "You showed me it doesn't." When they returned home months later, life settled into a new rhythm. Hannah completed her degree and accepted a position at a local children's center. The kids proudly introduced her as their mom, not because they were told to, but because it felt right. One evening, during a small family dinner, Daniel stood up, hands shaking slightly. "Hannah," he said, "will you marry me?" Before she could answer, Lily smiled and said, "Say yes. You already belong here." She did. The wedding was simple. The kids stood beside them, beaming. There was no talk of what Hannah couldn't do, only celebration of everything she was. Years later, at Lily's graduation, Hannah sat between Daniel and the kids, overwhelmed with emotion. In her speech, Lily said, "My mom taught me that worth isn't defined by what you can give biologically. It's defined by how deeply you love." Hannah realized then that she had never been broken. She had been misplaced. That cold night at the bus stop didn't mark the end of her life. It marked the moment she was finally seen, chosen, and valued. And sometimes, that's all it takes to change everything.